Yo guys, I've got a spark which I'm going to use to ignite the fire for another top 10 Thursday. It's just not on a Thursday this week because I got a little busy yesterday, so I've had to postpone today's uploads for top 10 Thursdays by a day, mind you, but it's as the old saying goes, better late than never. Regardless, you'll note how I said uploads. That's right, I'm going to be doing a double bill for top 10 Thursdays today, and that's to kind of make up for the fact that I have been missing top 10 Thursdays as of recent, and I'm going to make a tradition out of it. On the first Thursday of every month from this point onward, I will have a double upload for top 10 Thursdays, so that means two top 10s every single Thursday on the first Thursday of the month, mind you. I just had to say that twice because of repetition for effect and whatnot. Regardless, today's first top 10 is going to be focusing around the many reposes we've had throughout Skylanders history, and we're going to be counting down the top 10 best of these reposes. Now, bearing in mind that I'm not going to be including their WoW pals as part of a ranking here because I have my own separate list for the best WoW pals, mind you. So today we're going to be focusing solely on the pose of the character. Now, I'm not going to be including light cores and elites for this here list, only series 2, 3, and 4, but this list is based on just how awesome the repose is, how much it adds to the original character's design, and in general how much I just enjoy the repose and whether it feels necessary and whatnot. So without further ado, let's get into the top 10 countdown. Sorry buddy, you're not in this one. Starting off at number 10, we have Firebone Hot Dog, who is a very valuable Skylander to me personally because he's a pretty rare repose, so having him in my collection is quite an honour on my behalf. But that's not the only reason that this repose has made number 10 on the list right here. As you can see, he has a bone which is on fire, so that emphasises not only his element but the species he's based off as well, because he's a dog and dogs are associated with chewing bones. So I really appreciate the fact that the developers took the next step with this character's design and, you know, what it's based on to truly emphasize the cuteness within the species chosen out for Hot Dog, mind you, the fact that he's a dog, and so, you know, that bone maximizes his cuteness, and it's also a really nice repose as well. It goes together quite nicely. It's textured very well. The plastic they use for a fire is smooth and nice to rub your hands along, and the fact that Hot Dog is kind of like running on the base is just a very particularly clever mold. So above all, I just really enjoy this repose, and that's why it's number 10 on the list right here. At number 9, I've put Fawnhorn Camo because this design has slightly changed up Camo's colouring, so he's a slightly different shade of green, which is much nicer to look at, makes the character stand out a whole lot more. And then they've also stood him up so you can see more green and the yellow from his underbelly, so then the colours contrast more greatly, mind you. And I also love the spikes on his horns right here. It makes him look more intimidating as a Skylander of that, and the fact that he's also standing up on two legs. So because of the increased intimidation factor, it just makes this pose of Camo more attractive to play as, so to say, because, you know, you want to play as a Skylander that looks like it's going to be an absolute beast against its enemies. Well, Fawnhorn Camo definitely presents itself as just that, and it adds a lot to the original pose thanks to the fact that, you know, it's just got a better showcase of his colours, and it's just so much more cooler of a pose all the same. Number 8 is going to be Series 2 Double Trouble. Now, what I really love about this guy is the sheer attention to detail. His feathers have little increments embedded within them to make them look and feel like actual feathers, thanks to how great the texturing is. His mask is painted so it looks more wood-like, and even his little double right here has the small diamond increments, and it's just awfully detailed, so I love the detail that went into this pose first and foremost, and second of all, it just showcases what Double Trouble's moveset is about more effectively, his doubles, and because he's looking down at his double, it gives him more of like a fatherly type posture, so it shows off a more stronger bond between him and his doubles, which just adds a lot more personality and life to the character, and plus I also prefer him having his staff as more of an axe type thing, because it's a more intimidating based weapon, and again, more intimidating a Skylanders, the more attractive they are to play as, because they look like they're a greater threat against the enemies, and you definitely want to play as a Skylander that will threaten their enemies all the same. So yeah, Series 2 Double Trouble is just great for all of the factors I listed above, mind you. Coming in at number 7, we have Tidal Wave Gore. Now, he's riding a frickin' water serpent, for crying out loud. That is so cool, but at the same time, it's so betraying of his original design, because you can't see his harpoon gun anywhere. But hey, Gilgrunt definitely looks like he's having fun with this water serpent, and you can tell from the expression on his face that he definitely feels as though he's weighed up when it comes to his harpoon or the water serpent, so that adds a lot of personality to Gilgrunt himself. I just don't like the fact that there's no showcase of his signature harpoon gun whatsoever, but hey, this was the Series 4 iteration of him, so it was about time we saw something different. So this fresh take on the classic character is definitely much appreciated. And I just love how freaking cool that water serpent is, mind you. Coming in at number 6, we have Sure Shot Shroom Boom. That's quite a tongue twister, mind you. I dare you to say that 5 times faster. But as I digress, what makes this pose so great is that there's a lot of detail put into it, because upon the posing, you know, you not only have the self slingshot, but you also have Shroom Boom as he's holding on to it. So that's really, really cool to see. There's also a lot of details put into his skin, as you can tell from little bumps right there, and of course for little increments underneath his helmet, if of course my camera even wants to focus, that is. And the top of the helmet with the spikes on it is also very well textured, because it adds a greater intimidation factor to the character, which once again makes you want to play as him, because he looks like a greater threat to his enemies. But what's so great about this repose is that it truly emphasizes Shroom Boom's personality, because he's a very courageous little mushroom, and so the fact that, you know, he's willing to fire himself out of his slingshot to create the greatest attack against his enemies really showcases that courage and bravery that Shroom Boom possesses. So I'm glad that it's such a personality driven repose, and it adds a lot to the character, and above all just makes you want to play as him even more. Coming in at number 5, we have Fizzy Frenzy Pop Fizz. Now, I'm going to be honest with you here, I have no idea why it's called Fizzy Frenzy, considering that he's in his beast mode for his pose, so I suppose a name more fitting than Fizzy Frenzy could have been utilised, but that's pretty much where my nitpicks for this character end, because when Pop Fizz's beast mode was first introduced in Giants, all I wanted to see was that glorious beast mode in toy form, and we didn't get that all the way up until Trap Team, but oh boy, when Trap Team pulled it off well. This guy's gloves are very, very well detailed. You can see the buckles on them and everything. And then the back of his figurine has just so much hair incorporated into the texture, and to make it satisfying to rub your finger along. He still has, of course, the little jacket on, so it's very much a very detailed figurine. And I'm glad that it was able to express Pop Fizz's second form, his beast form, mind you. And not to mention, it's so in character for his beast form, because he looks wild and so ready for attack, so to say. His eyes convey that with all the multiple colours, and the fact that it's kind of like staring down its enemy, ready to slash it down. So I'm glad that they definitely nailed the personality of the beast mode as well, with the fact that it's kind of savage. So yes, between the personality and finally being able to see the beast mode in a toy form in all of its glory is fantastic, and even better yet that it's as detailed as it is, and the colours of course really pop, pun intended, with the blues and the purples having a really great contrast with one another. So above all, this is a great repose, and it definitely deserves the number 5 spot on the list right here. Coming in at number 4, we have Cinder. Now, what I really like about this pose is the shape, because if I turn around right here, you can see that she's kind of curved, which, you know, emphasizes the fact that she's really great with movement, and it adds a lot of personality to her character. But what I love about it most is the plastic used, because the thing with the plastic is that it's slightly see-through, so it adds a lot of detail to this character, and above all, just makes it very satisfying to gaze upon on for shelf Miley because she stands out above all the other Skylanders based on the plastic used alone and that slight translucency. And, you know, it just brings so much colour to her character as well. So it's just a really well done repose, and I'm glad that they chose out the plastics for it that they did. Not to mention, seeing the lightning on her wings, emphasising the fact that she has lightning-based abilities, is a really nice, detailed touch to it, mind you, which I also really appreciate. Coming in at number 3, we have Series 2 Drobot, which is a really great pose based on the amount of detail that it was able to add to this character. First of all, his wings are as detailed as always, with small little lines and bolts within it to show where Drobot would have, of course, manually built up the suit from the ground up, mind you, and how he would have, of course, welded it together with the weld lines and everything just incremented into the plastic. That's great detail in and of itself. But then we've also got the golden gear, which is huge, first of all, and that's pretty awesome. And the thing with the gear is that you not only have the tail seeping right through it as it bends round from the back, but you also have the nice little spike on Drobot's head sitting in between it. So I love the fact that they took advantage of all of the little details of Drobot, including like the wings so you can rest the blade on top of it, his tail, put the tail through the middle of the blade, and the spike on his head also sitting through it. Just really shows that the developers knew what they were doing with each element of Drobot's design to create a really detailed and very well designed mold. This mold just looks so damn cool, and I love the detail that's put into it. In fact, my words cannot truly compensate for how much I love this mold. But even more detailed yet is Series 2 Prison Break. Now, you can tell that he's kind of like got his mouth wide open and his arms sat behind him, so he's kind of roaring at his enemies, which adds that intimidation factor, which is very important to a repose, because, you know, you want to pick up a repose that's going to make your enemies quiver with fear when you play as a Skylander. So, you know, that gives you the idea of power, and that makes Prison Break's repose fun right out of the bat. But I love the sheer amount of detail going into this character, because first of all, you have the crystal backpack in addition to the pose, which looks so glorious, and it's also very well textured. It's smooth, so it's nice to rub your hand along, mind you. You also have the crystals on the shoulders, and better yet is the fact that on the base you have the crystals splattering outward, because that's one of his attacks, to create a nice little crystal explosion. So the fact that they were able to cram so much detail into a single design is ultimately what makes Series 2 Prison Break such a awesome and memorable repose, and definitely worthy of a number 2 spot. In fact, he would be number 1 if it wasn't for bias, complete and utter bias. Of course, Igniter is going to get number 1. He's my favourite Skylander, but even with that being said and done, this character, without the bias, is still a phenomenal repose and the best Skylanders has ever had to offer, because first of all, the blues and the silvers just create such an awesome contrast with one another, and Igniter holding his axe upward kind of foreshadows the fact that, you know, he seeks victory, and that, you know, he will happily grant it for you through his valor and knightsmanship. So above all, you know, simply taking his fire sword and giving him a fire axe instead, which is such a cool weapon, and placing that above his head in basically a victorious pose just adds so much personality to the character, makes you want to play as him even more, because, you know, he kind of implies victory and everything. But not to mention, the detail in his armor itself is also increased dramatically, because we have ourselves a turtle shell back here, which has such detail put into the small little increments on its back, if my camera even wants to focus, that is, with a fire element and all of the little increments within it. So that adds so much detail to Igniter's pose. And so above all, I love the mold, I love the detail, I love the character in-game and out of game. So the fact that this pose is so character driven and looks so cool is ultimately what gets it the number 1 spot. For that, and also there's plenty of bias to go around when it comes to me and my love for Igniter. Here we have the whole list in assembly, so that looks pretty glorious to say the least, especially with so many reposes all in one shot. But as I digress, I want to thank you guys so much for watching this top 10, and I will see you in a few hours for the next one. But until that moment arises, peace!